I recently visited a number of sites in Glastonbury in Somerset, and this video is a compilation of the videos I made as a result of the visit. They feature the history, mythology and legends of this wonderful site. One of the most tranquil places I've ever visited is mythologically linked to the Holy Grail, seen by some as the cup that caught the blood of the crucified Jesus Christ. The location is the Chalice Well and surrounding gardens at the foot of Glastonbury Tor in Somerset. The waters actually run with a red tinge, which is undoubtedly as a result of the high iron content, which is noticeable in the flavour of the water, which is free to collect and drink by visitors for a modest entrance fee or from an external pipe on the outskirts of the site. But the ruddy hue of the spring water also bears the previously alluded to Grail legend. Mythology tells that the Chalice Well marks the site where Joseph of Arimathea placed the chalice that had caught the drops of blood from Christ at the crucifixion. Close by, the original Glastonbury thorn, a tree that flowers twice a year around Christmas and Easter, sprung up as Joseph thrust his staff into the sacred earth. The red of the water is also said by some adherents to the legend to represent the rusty iron nails used at the crucifixion. According to local law, the waters from the well have three attributes in common with human blood. They are red, the water coagulates as does haemoglobin, and the water is warm. Archaeological evidence suggests that the spring has been in use for at least 2,000 years since the Neolithic, and is likely to have had a sacred quality more or less ever since. Water issues from the spring at a rate of 25,000 imperial gallons, or 110,000 litres per day, and has never failed even during drought. From my visit, in which I paddled barefoot in the allegedly healing water, I have to say that the beautiful gardens, gentle but purposeful babbling water, and the stunning array of birds and insects that populate the site lend it nothing short of a magical quality. Unsurprisingly, the site has become a hub for people with so-called New Age beliefs, and there were plenty of those in evidence. This was particularly the case where a group had gathered around an ornate well which has a lid that would not look out of place in the Shire of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. There is also a belief that the spring represents the aspect of the sacred feminine, in contrast to the supposedly masculine phallic element of the Tor itself, which rises high above the surrounding landscape. The red spring is not the only source of mineral-rich water, and is located right next to the white spring. This is so called because of the colourless clarity of the calcium-rich water, which leaves white calcite stains behind. A makeshift modern-day temple marks the site of the white spring, adding to the mystical and New Age vibe of the location. Whatever the historical or mythological facts of the site, it is a truly marvellous, calming and profound place to visit. Glastonbury Tor in Somerset is a vastly ancient site. Archaeologists have discovered flint tools from as far back as the Neolithic. With this in mind, it would be fair to say, if it were able, it would have borne witness to many significant events, changing beliefs and, as we shall see, some episodes of genuine horror. At one point, it is likely the Tor would have appeared as an island rising above the surrounding landscape and Avalon marshes, a name which has mythical associations with the interlinked legends of the Holy Grail and King Arthur. There is some evidence to suggest there may have been a Romano-British temple at the top of the Tor, which would also place it in the mythical Arthur period. It is likely that, in the Iron Age, the site was used as a temporary defensive hill fort, but was not a permanent settlement. Archaeological finds suggest that during the twilight of Saxon England, and shortly after the Norman conquest, there were at least 4 buildings at the summit. The base of a stone cross demonstrates Christian use of the site during this period, and it may have served as a hermitage. The first church at the site was a timber structure believed to have been constructed in the 11th or 12th century and was discovered via telltale post holes. The church was dedicated to St. Michael. It was destroyed in a powerful earthquake on the 11th of September 1275, from which experts believe tremors could have been felt as far away as London, Canterbury and Wales. The timber edifice was replaced by the new St. Michael's Church, which was made of sandstone in the 14th century. But it too would come to grief in the form of the anthropomorphized natural disaster that was Henry VIII and his policy of cultural vandalism and looting, known as the dissolution of the monasteries. Henry was a polarising figure and undoubted tyrant, but it could be argued that his violent break with Rome is what helped to forge a true nation of England. However, there is no doubting that he was very much bad news from the point of view of ecclesiastical architecture, both in Glastonbury and beyond. In 1539, all but the tower of St Michael's was torn down. Thankfully, it remains to this day, a skeletal roofless shell, a revenant remnant of an extinguished way of life, and demolition would not be the end of the horror. The Tor was the site of the brutal execution of Richard Whiting, the last abbot of Glastonbury Abbey, along with two of his brother monks, John Thorne and Roger James. They were dragged to the top of the Tor and hanged, drawn and quartered after charges of looting the abbey when the king's men failed to discover fabulous treasures they had hoped for as they ransacked the now ruined abbey. Whiting was also accused of treason and convicted without trial by Thomas Cromwell, who was Henry VIII's political and religious fixer. After the grisly deaths, Whiting's head was fastened over the west gate of the abbey, and his limbs were displayed at Wells, Bath, Ilchester and Bridgewater. Away from established, provable history, the site is home to a swirling panoply of myths and legends, with local folklore holding that the Tor could be the mythical Isle of Avalon. The Tor seems to have once been called Ynys yr Avalon, meaning the Isle of Avalon, by the Britons, and the 12th and 13th century chronicler Gerald of Wales believed it was the Avalon referred to in Arthurian legend. The area has been associated with Arthurian mythology ever since the alleged discovery of two coffins labelled as belonging to Arthur and his queen, Guinevere, in 1191. Some see this convenient find as being part of a ruse to cash in on the pilgrimage boom that was taking place in England. Glastonbury's churchmen would certainly have been tempted by that deadly sin, envy, after witnessing the growth of the pilgrimage industry in Canterbury following the murder of the Archbishop Thomas Becket in 1170. Just over 2 decades later, did they hit upon a money-spinning idea of their own by claiming to possess the remains of the mythical once and future king. But I'm not here to shatter myths, especially fun ones, and Arthur represents far more than earthly remains. The legend provides a link to a distant past, and Glastonbury Tor offers plenty in that respect. The Tor has been associated with gods and goddesses of Celtic and its precursor Indo-European mythology. One of these deities is Gwyn ap Nuth, the first lord of the otherworld and king of the fairies, and the Tor was believed to be a gateway to the land of the dead. Gwyn ap Nuth is also strongly associated with the wider legend of the Wild Hunt, which also features in Germanic and Norse mythology, with either Thor or Odin at the head of a sky-bound hunting party, and notably in Windsor in the legend of Herne the Hunter, a spectral deer-headed entity who is said to haunt Windsor Great Park. Herne the Hunter, who first appears in print in Shakespeare's The Merry Wives of Windsor, can possibly be seen as a continuation of the Celtic god Cernunnos and or the notion of the Green Man or Green Knight of Arthurian legend. St Michael's Tower has a curious female character etched on its walls that could also hark back to a pagan Celtic past. It is thought that the sculpted figure is St Brigid milking a cow. Possibly euhemerized, the process by which characters are transferred from a god to a real person to incorporate them into Christian belief. St Brigid is thought to be represented in the relief on the exterior wall of St Michael's Tower. She, if it is indeed her, is seen milking a cow. There is some debate over whether St Brigid was actually a real person. She has the same name and many of the same attributes as the Celtic goddess Brigid. In common with the saint, the original Celtic deity is associated with poetry, healing, smithing, protection and animal husbandry. A previous Hidden History video focuses on the nearby Chalice Well and its alleged links to the Holy Grail, link in the description. Some historians believe the striking and most likely natural but modified feature of the Tor inspired the construction of Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, which is the largest artificial mound in Europe. My last video on Glastonbury looked at the mythology and gruesome history of Glastonbury Tor. This video will examine legends associated with Glastonbury Abbey, but will also take in the Tor and the area in general. The main legend most people associate with the Abbey is that it is the burial place of a very famous royal couple who may or may not have existed. I speak, of course, of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere. The area has been associated with Arthurian mythology ever since the alleged discovery of two coffins labelled as belonging to Arthur and his queen in 1191, although, as I stated previously, this discovery could have been a con to try to entice pilgrims and their cash to the Abbey. However, there are other Arthurian links. These include the original name of Glastonbury Tor, Yinis Yerafalon, meaning the Isle of Avalon, in the original Brittonic language of the area. The 12th and 13th century chronicler, Gerald of Wales, believed it was the Avalon referred to in Arthurian legend, but there is another, even more startling legend associated with the site. That of the alleged visit of Joseph of Arimathea to Glastonbury. Joseph, who was Jesus Christ's great-uncle, could have been a metal trader, and if that was the case, he would have had a professional interest in Britain, as it was well known for its abundance of tin, an essential component in making bronze. Joseph was also alleged to have been the bearer of the cup used at the Last Supper that caught drops of Christ's blood at the crucifixion, the mythical Holy Grail, and legend has it that he brought the Grail to Glastonbury. My previous video on the Chalice Well looks into this legend. The grounds of Glastonbury Abbey also contains the Glastonbury thorn, a tree that flowers twice a year around Christmas and Easter. This tree is said to be a descendant of the original thorn that was destroyed by fire by po-faced Puritans during the English Civil War. The current thorn was said to have been grown from sprigs of the original, carefully and secretly guarded by protectors. The original tree is said to have spontaneously sprouted on Weariall Hill from the staff of Joseph of Arimathea after his journey to Glastonbury. But the concept of Joseph's presence in Glastonbury remains controversial. The thorn was first mentioned in a pamphlet published by Richard Pinson in 1520 called Life of Joseph of Arimathea, which was almost certainly commissioned by Glastonbury Abbey, lending weight to the notion that it may have been a yarn to bring in the lucrative pilgrimage trade. A custom persists which probably dates from the 17th century, where a budded branch of the Glastonbury thorn is sent to the sovereign each year at Christmas. However, there is an even more outlandish claim that Jesus Christ himself visited Glastonbury. The legend is recalled in William Blake's poem Jerusalem, which is best known today as a stirring hymn. It features the lyrics, "And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green? And was the Holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen?" The legend goes that an infant Jesus was brought along by Joseph of Arimathea, possibly on one of his metal trading expeditions from the Middle East. It is also rumoured that Joseph is buried somewhere in the Abbey and helped to establish the first church in the British Isles at the site. A holy spring at part of the site is also called St. Joseph's Well and is renowned for healing properties. It remains a place of pilgrimage to this day. The expansive ruined abbey is a wonderful place, and I visited in bright early summer sunshine, which made for a stunning experience. The dramatic ruined abbey, set amongst sprawling gardens, some cultivated, some overgrown, is something to behold. And despite my natural scepticism, it is difficult not to get swept up in the weight of history, myth, folklore and legend associated with this iconic location. So, is King Arthur buried here? Is Joseph of Arimathea buried here? Did Joseph ever visit? Did Jesus ever walk upon England's mountains green? These are currently unanswerable questions, but they are still well worth asking. The magic of a quest for the Holy Grail is in the looking, not necessarily in the finding. The search is an end in itself. I think I'll keep on looking. The largest artificial mound in Europe, the mysterious Silbury Hill, compares in height and volume to the roughly contemporary Egyptian pyramids. The enormous man-made structure in Wiltshire is thought to have been completed in around 2400 BC. No funerary remains have been found, and the reason for its construction remains unknown. One place where human remains were found is the nearby West Kennet Long Barrow, which I will return to shortly. Silbury Hill stands at a colossal 30 metres high, 98 feet, and 160 metres, 525 feet wide. The incredible undertaking would have taken generations to complete, and it is estimated to have required around 4 million hours of work. It is fashioned from 500,000 tons of building materials, comprised largely of chalk, which is abundant in the surrounding landscape. Although it is now covered with turf, it would originally have had bare chalk sides and would have stood out against the landscape. It consists of a core of sarsen stones capped with chalk rubble from the surrounding quarry ditches. The endeavour of creating the monument could perhaps have been a cultural focal point, aimed at fostering a shared culture, and is likely to have taken on a religious or ritual significance, or have had such elements from the outset. TV archaeologist Neil Oliver has espoused the theory that Silbury Hill could be an artificial replica of the natural but modified feature of Glastonbury Tor, which lies just under 50 miles away in Somerset. Both mounds could be seen to represent the concept of a pregnant Earth Mother, or, conversely, they could represent phallic symbols rising from the landscape. The truth is that we don't know for sure. But what is known is that the location clearly had potent religious and cultural significance for those that created it, the Neolithic farmers. The mound itself retained historical significance later in Britain's story also. For a recent geophysical survey revealed that Roman invaders and occupiers built a road and an extensive settlement around the foot of the mound, and in the early medieval period, the top of the hill was thought to have been flattened and became the location of a defensive structure. Silbury Hill is part of the ancient Ridgeway route, close to the Avebury stone circle and not far from Stonehenge, both also hugely significant structures in the Neolithic period, but its closest neighbour is the aforementioned West Kennet Long Barrow. The West Kennet Long Barrow is a chambered long barrow which dates back 5,500 years, 1,000 years older than Silbury Hill. The barrow is around a mile from the hill, up a ridge across open farmland, which, on my visit, was guarded by a herd of fairly protective cows. Excavations have revealed that the barrow was used as a communal tomb, with at least 46 people buried there over a 1,000-year period. Some cremations were also discovered alongside grave goods, including pottery, beads and stone implements such as a dagger dated between 3000 and 2600 BC. The chambers contain the remains of a cross-section of the community, men and women, and from the very young to the elderly. Few complete skeletons were found intact, and it appears that the bones were rearranged or sometimes removed altogether as part of ritual ancestor worship practices. Mysteriously, 4,000 years ago, the tomb was deliberately filled in and the entrance blocked by large stones. In 1859, John Thurnham excavated the western chamber and central passage. He was apparently unaware of the existence of the other chambers, which were not excavated until 1955 by Stuart Piggott and Richard Atkinson. The main passage penetrates around 13 metres, 42 feet, into the barrow, with two of the burial chambers on each side of the passageway and one chamber at the end. On my recent visit, the furthest accessible wall of the barrow was beset with offerings, presumably made by people with New Age beliefs, including candles, apples and other trinkets. Alongside Silbury Hill, West Kennet Long Barrow is a fascinating site, which poses more questions than answers. Chief among these, of course, is the simple question, why? Why would Neolithic farmers undertake these massive projects? And, in the particular case of West Kennet Long Barrow, why would they abandon and close up a site of such obvious ritual significance? Hopefully one day these riddles will be solved. Glastonbury Abbey is often associated with Celtic Britons and is fated as the potential burial place of the legendary Romano-British monarch, King Arthur. However, away from the heady world of mythology, it is a fact that 3 kings of non-Celtic origin were buried at the site. These are the Anglo-Saxon rulers, Edgar the Peaceful, Edmund I, and Edmund Ironside. The fact that 3 kings of the one-time Saxon invaders embraced the undoubtedly sacred location speaks to its transcendent power. But it could also be a kind of syncretism, like when Christian shrines are built atop former pagan temples, or a similar phenomena to the establishment of mosques or churches at former Christian or Muslim holy sites by invaders who follow a different faith. This was also evident when another new line of monarchs, the Plantagenets, in this case in the form of Edward I, played along with the Arthur connections to increase his claim to follow in the mythical monarch's footsteps. Edward and Queen Eleanor were present for a symbolic opening of King Arthur's alleged tomb at Glastonbury Abbey in 1278. It can be seen as perhaps more than a coincidence that Edward was engaged in a brutal military campaign against Arthur's would-be compatriots in Wales at the time of this Plantagenet Pendragon pantomime. The three earlier Saxon kings' burials highlight the continuing importance of Glastonbury Abbey despite the changing of the elites in the land that is now known as England. Edmund I reigned as King of the English from the 27th of October 939 to the 26th of May 946. Edgar the Peaceful held the same regnal title from the 1st of October 959 to the 8th of July 975. And Edmund Ironside was also King of the English for a brief reign from the 23rd of April to the 30th of November 1016, before the title was slightly amended to King of England in the reign of his successor, the Norseman Knut the Great, who also wore the crowns of Denmark and Norway at various times as ruler of the so-called North Sea Empire. The connection of Glastonbury to the reigning monarch of England persists to this day, with a flowering sprig of the Glastonbury thorn tree being presented to Queen Elizabeth II each year at Christmas time. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like, share and most importantly subscribe, and thank you for watching.